All right, let's call the January meeting of the Town of Newbury Human Resources Board to order. Present are
Diane Doyle.
Mark Blackman,
John Ferrara.
Anthony Antico.
thank you all. We have 4 members present. That gives us our quorum, so we're good to go. Lynn Peabody should be joining us momentarily, and unfortunately Chief Fisher is unable to attend today, but again, we have our quorum, so everything is legal to move ahead. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the prior meeting. Diane, as always, thank you in advance for getting those minutes to the board. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion?
Has everyone had, I'm sorry, has everyone had the opportunity to read through?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you again, Diane. Employee issues. Diane, we turn to you. Nothing I'm aware of. Is there anything that's... Hey, Lynn.
Hi, I just signed the book and got my stickers.
I'm not aware of any employee issues that have been brought to my attention.
Okay, thank you. And I have not heard anything from Chief Fisher in that regard either in PD, so.
Okay.
Then we just approved the minutes from the last meeting, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Personnel actions and job vacancies. I know we've had a flurry of stuff happen over the last couple of months, but I think when I've heard, we're in reasonably good shape.
Yeah, I think I looked back at where we were at. So we have had a couple of recent resignations. The first one is a full-time dispatcher at the police department who is moving on to another community in the hopes of pursuing a career more in the police side of things versus dispatch. So he will be leaving the end of this week. And we just had a resignation of a full-time firefighter who is pursuing his EMT certification and felt that he needed to focus on that. So those 2 jobs will be posted. I'm assuming these both just came to my attention today. So,
Okay.
but other than that, I think we're, that's it. That's all we have.
Those are the only 2 job openings that we have?
I mean, and those just came to my attention
Yeah.
this week.
Well, good for us.
I know as of 2 months ago, in our last meeting, the police department still had 1 full-time patrolman position available. Has that one been filled, you know?
Well, we hired James Fitzgerald, and maybe she has 1 full-time. So now she'll have one full-time dispatch and 1 full-time patrolman.
Okay, so that's still the case. Okay.
Do we not give leave of absence to folks who want to advance their education? You go for the EMT calls and then you go on back on the course?
We will, but he submitted his resignation. I think he's moving on.
You think he's
I
finding
think-
a new village?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You're right. So that will now be a full-time dispatcher, a full-time police officer,
Okay,
and 1 full-time firefighter.
okay, but here in Town Hall, things are good?
Yeah,
Good.
good shape.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm not aware of any workplace issues, discrimination issues, ethics issues. Everything seems to be moving along smoothly. Hope that's the case.
Yep.
Safety issues typically return to Chief Fisher here. I assume if there's anything new in terms of protocol, she would have alerted us to that. Nothing else is happening here at Town Hall. Okay, thank you. All right, other business. We have had some dialogue with Sandy Stepsinski. And the good news is that she is well into her timeline. The expectation, if you recall, back in November was that it would be probably a 3-month project, give or take. And as of recent conversations that Diane and Tracy have had with Sandy, she is still on pace to be done with the project within the 3-month time frame, which means that, as I think we originally talked about, we should expect that Sandy will join us for our next meeting in February, as well as Tracy, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I'll have to check with Tracy,
Yeah.
but once we, but yes.
Sandy has sent along some very preliminary work that she's done. As we expected, it's a composition of 10 or 12 towns, I think, all in and around Essex County, the towns that you would expect. You know, she would be comparing and contrasting us to. And she's got a good deal of this of the spaces filled in with we're not clear at this point. We're waiting to get clarification from her whether some of the numbers are actual pay rates, or I think in most cases they're probably salary ranges. That's fairly typical, I think, in our industry, the mins and the maxes. She still has a ways to go in terms of gathering the rest of that data. I'm not sure how many towns have been tardy in getting back to her. I think the hope, or my expectation, is that everything will be in place within the next 2 weeks, which means we will be able to get her to give us, I guess, probably through Diane, and Diane can distribute to the rest of us, give us the entire package of the rate information, where it sits vis-a-vis, competitive towns in Essex County, and then we're looking at, certain percentages, certain percentiles, where do you want to be as a town? Let me turn it over to Diane. She's had a little bit more conversation with Sandy.
Yep.
So
I reached out to her just probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, just to see where she was, what the status was, and get an understanding of kind of like, are we still on track? Do you need anything? So she had sent us a preliminary data sheet, basically, which was that salary survey. And, again, she indicated that she's still waiting for some responses that she expects to get back. So it was not in final format, but, and she had indicated that she said, I may have the pay in class, all the rest of the information in terms of the classification, schedule, and compensation, ranges and so forth. She thought she would have it today. So she did send over another email today with some additional information. And I think we thought about bringing sort of the preliminary information and providing it tonight, but I looked at it and felt without further discussion or further clarification, it just wasn't appropriate because A, she's waiting for still more information. We don't know certain things, and without her here to answer questions, we kind of felt like it would be
but I think it is
preliminary.
Let me fill the report. I mean,
But-
individually, I think it's important that we try to get it within a couple of weeks, so that we'll have at least a week to sort of digest it,
Kind of study, yeah.
So,
prepare questions, quiz her on whatever we need to quiz her on.
so the other 2 things that I'll add is when I got the information from her today, she said she was still wrapping up the benefits information that she promised us that she would look at as well. And my understanding is that when she presents it to us, it still will be in draft format for discussion, and then it will be finalized based on the discussions that we have. Because she wanted to know things, like Mark had started to indicate, do we want to be at the 50 percentile? Do we want to be at the 75 percentile? Do we, where do we want to be, and what are the things that we're looking for, so that she can benchmark it against some of those decisions? Do we want to consider step increases? Do we have step increases? We have step increases in a lot of our collective bargaining agreements, but, so those types of conversations, I think, is what she expects to have on February 24th, when she brings the draft of her findings.
So, to Mark's point, then, do we want a draft before even she gets here, or is that just going to be kind of opening a can of worms for us, like without her here to navigate our conversation?
Thoughts?
Well, I would think that a perusal and discovery process ahead of time, where we could spend time on one-on-one and then as a group here together, even if you have to call a special half meeting, and then we bring her in.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the homework done.
Subcommittee meeting maybe in
Yeah.
advance if
Yeah.
possible. Okay, yeah. That was my inclination too, that my guess is each one of us would look at all this data and something or some things would catch our individual eyes that you'd want to circle and double back with her on it. But to the point that Diane was just making, I think it's important that we have some additional dialogue with Tracy so we can understand from the town administrator's perspective what goodness looks like in terms of how we want to compare and contrast with other towns. And
Yeah.
I mentioned to Diane that I remember, I wrote myself a note, didn't bring it today, of course. I wrote myself a note probably a year ago when we were starting to ruminate on this. And one of my first questions to myself was, well, where does the town of Newbury want to be or need to be, and I think that's a philosophical conversation, right? You know, do we feel it's necessary to be at the top of the range versus our competition? Do we feel we want to be at the midpoint? Do we want to be at 65% of the market or 75% of the market or whatever the number might be?
And what are we measuring, what those percentages? Outlay for a number of items within the budget? I mean, I brought up to you, I think I sent you a copy of the Manchester by the Sea report, 2021, and the gentleman who was the treasurer at the time, he had your house, your job, and he's no longer sitting in that chair. And government, police, fire, public safety, education, public works, human resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, debt service and fixed costs. And where do we rank amongst Salisbury, Salem, Raleigh, Rockport, Newbury, Marblehead, Ipswich, Hamilton, Gloucester, Essex, Danvers, Beverly, and of course Manchester by the Sea? We're dead smack in the middle on almost every single category. And Manchester is the tallest of the bunch. Maybe it's because they have combined schools, because they've got Essex and Manchester together, and I've been on that campus, and that's an expensive outlay. But I mean, it's been done before.
So back to Lynn's original question, I mean, I don't think it does us any harm to have it in advance and hold on, I mean, it gives us an opportunity to write down a laundry list of questions, right?
You think we'll go off in the wrong direction without direction?
No, not necessarily, but just, I know when she was here the last time we met, and she was really kind of guiding the conversation, and I know I had a lot of questions for her, and she was able to kind of guide where she was going with this project. You know, and so I'm thinking that I will have questions, you know, we all will.
Sure.
And if we're looking at this ourselves, you know, without her to kind of navigate, you know, what the sheet is and, you know, where she came up with these numbers and things, you know, is that going to be a productive exercise for us, or would it be more beneficial to just sit with her and have her say, here you go, this is what it is, this is how I came to these numbers, this is, you know, this was my methodology, things like that. You know, just for our conversation, I just am bringing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Tony, your thoughts? Ambivalent on it?
I'm really very ambivalent. This is after I perused with all kinds of time inserted, the components of compensation she gave us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, my inclination is to want to get the data in advance,
Yeah.
knowing full well that
Yeah.
some of it will be Greek to me, but other pieces of it will be, you know,
But-
understandable.
But
and-
it's obviously subject to the subsequent meeting with her.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, we're not going to
yeah.
draw any conclusions from it.
Right, right.
And again, there are going to be vagaries that are attached to, and we talked about this already. Job descriptions differ. A treasurer collector in town A may have very different breadth of responsibility than a treasurer collector in town B or town C. How do you factor that in? But the philosophical part, which is what I was talking about a couple minutes ago, is, you know, when all is said and done, where does town administration in Newbury feel that we should be? You know, knowing full well that, you know, there are gonna be times that people move from one town to another regardless. So those are conversations I think are worthy to have with Tracy, and if the board feels that it would benefit us to maybe powwow with Tracy in advance of Sandy coming back in, we can certainly see if we can effort that. Have a quick half-hour, 45-minute meeting, even if it's maybe by Zoom if necessary, if people can't get there physically, you know, that's
Well, Lynn's
all
point,
doable.
Lynn's point's valid in that that preliminary meeting with her face-to-face would refine the product she then brings back, when she knows what we want her to focus on. And that's, I mean, that's a valid point. If she goes off and does on a tangent what she typically does, that might not suit the unique circumstance of a three-village township that has got only 6,300 folks who live here.
But hasn't that been done initially?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen a list of the things that were turned over to her.
I don't know if, the nature of Newbury is relevant you know, we have an employee population of 60-odd folks, probably not dissimilar to other towns, and, I mean, we have a unique makeup in Newbury of the three villages and Plymouth and all the rest.
Sorry to interrupt, but taking that as an example, so for her to sit here, and how many towns did she query? 12, 20?
12, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so me, fairly new to the area, for her to do her intro and say, okay, these are the towns, you know, these are the populations, this is kind of where we fit in, you know, and just to kind of give me that intro into what am I looking at? And, you know, and so how does my look at the data, you know, how does what she's saying inform my look at the data? And, you know, versus me going, okay, so what is our population? And it'll be in there somewhere, you know, and I'll be messing around with it. But I don't know, I just think maybe an intro from her. But that said, and I know that this is a public meeting, right? I didn't think the last time she was here, she gave a good intro into the project.
Agreed.
I agree with that. Right,
So,
right, okay. Well, back to the matter at hand.
yep,
Let's just do an informal poll on it in terms of whether we think it's appropriate for her to give us, let's say, 2 weeks from now, whatever she has to date, which should be, I'm guessing, 95% of what the final, you know, project, the work project might look like. Do we feel like it's in our best interest to review it in advance, to come prepared with, you know, questions, and also with an understanding that we don't know what we don't know yet with some of this stuff, so.
Until she says, well, I'm really not ready yet. There's something else I have to do. No, I don't know. It's-
She's given Diane assurances each step of the way that
Yeah.
she'll be done within the 3-month time frame. So I think we have to take her on her word for that.
one more point. Oops. So if we do our own meeting to kind of review before we get with her, then is it going to be redundant to get with her and she is going to then talk about the project and her, you know,
Okay.
how she pulled the data and all of that? You know, instead of us taking twice as much time, we're doing our own review, we're doing it with Tracy, whatever, and then with her, you know, I mean, is that just redundant?
Yeah,
Whereas if-
that would be redundant.
Yeah.
I was thinking something other than that.
Okay,
I was thinking that we are not, as a board, gonna meet independent of her to discuss this data.
okay.
What we're gonna do is review the data that she gives, if we agree. We'll review what she gives us to prepare ourselves for the conversation, to jot down questions you may have off of the data. And then the only conversation we would have is not about the data, but philosophically with Tracy to understand from the town administrator's perspective, and it might be a 15-minute conversation, you know. What
And
the-
then we
what-
meet with her?
And then we meet with Sandy. So, yeah, I wasn't thinking about us reviewing all this data in advance. That would be redundant.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, this is strictly, let's get it into our hands so we can prepare to meet with her.
Yeah.
And then along the way, we'll, you know, see if we can spend a few minutes with Tracy just to understand her perspective on, because we really haven't had a lot of conversation with Tracy about compensation.
mhm.
You know, she is, as we have been, she's been championing this project, that it's long overdue. But we really, at least I haven't, had any real substantive conversation with Tracy about where she feels we need to be.
But then Tracy's going to give an overview of the project. You know, and then we're going to be hearing it from, I forget her name.
Sandy.
Sandy. You know, I don't know, I'm drilling down way too deep, so.
So I did not think that we would meet and discuss preliminary data because there are still things that she's gonna want us to provide input on.
Yeah,
So I felt like we would distribute what she sends us as a draft for us to all look at independently for non-discussion purposes.
Non-discussion purposes, right?
So we would all independently look at the data, sort of get familiar with how the format that it's in and the data that's presented. But I think what Mark's talking about is finding out from Tracy, in conjunction with what we discuss, where do we want to see Newbury sit? Is it at the 50th percentile of this data? Do we want to be at the 65th or the 75th percentile? I think that's what you're saying.
That's it, yeah.
So that when we take our independent review of the data, along with maybe some guidance from town administrator where she thinks that we should sit. And then we would discuss with Sandy the things that she still wants input on. She's gonna want, and you'd have to see the data, but she has it earmarked where she's done the analysis of all her responses. And it comes up with, here is the average rate of pay for X job. At the 50th percentile, it would be this, at the 65th, at the 75th, it would be this. And I think she's trying to say, okay, this is all going to be in sort of draft format. Tell me where you want to see the town sit, and then I think her idea is that she finalize everything and provide us with the report. I think there are still things that she is looking to present and have input on before she actually comes up with the final product, if you will. I think that's more or less what that I've heard is what you're saying.
Yeah, and who's going to provide all of those elements? Yourself and Tracy, your office?
No, I'm thinking it's some guidance from, a conversation with Tracy, but then also where we think, with that information from Tracy, where we think we should be sitting as a town.
Because
Does that
otherwise,
make sense?
It does, but she's our consult,
Yep.
right, on this, our consultant, and I don't know, I'm just thinking that she's the one that's been digging into the data and massaging it and everything else. You know, so for us to do all this pre-work and then get with her, it's
not pre-work, I think it's just, here's the data that we're gonna be discussing.
Yep.
Familiarize yourself with it, so that when we have the discussion, when she comes in on the 24th, I
It
don't
makes
think.
some sense.
Yeah, we'll make some sense, we'll start to know what she's talking about. I don't think there's a lot of pre-work.
well,
Are you looking for her,
review of the data.
yeah, are you looking for her to say to us where we should be sitting?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
but she may have her own thoughts on
She
that.
may have her thoughts on that, but.
yeah, based on the data, yeah, and she is going to kind of recommend. I mean, that's what you hire a consultant for, right?
Right.
And granted, we hired her to just pull all the data, but, again, I apologize. But if I get the data, you know, we're all gonna be looking at it with eagle eyes, right? I'm looking at her to kind of, you know, talk to us about what this data is. Where'd she get it? What's it look like to her as the expert?
Right?
And, you know, and then we can, I don't know, I think it would be good to get the data beforehand, but I don't know how much I wanna dig into it without her,
That's what we're saying.
you know, without her like
Absolutely.
guiding the
Yeah,
conversation.
no, I think that's what we're
Yeah,
saying.
Yeah.
each person individual has an opportunity to review it, and for those who may wanna, you know, study it, and those who may wanna, you know, do a flyby, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Just intuitively, I've always felt like if there's data available, you know, I know full well not to make too many assumptions of the data, but if there's data available, I've always been one to believe that I'd rather have it than not have it, and to be able to go into the conversation with well-formed thoughts and questions, that's all.
Yeah, some homework before you're asked to comment, yeah.
See, he said homework too.
I mean, I've seen the data, I saw the data from a couple of weeks ago, and then I briefly saw what she sent today.
Yeah.
And I think it does give an opportunity to start thinking about what we want her to, I don't mean homework, but what we want to have a dialogue about and understand. It's just, it starts, I mean, I've looked at it and I'm like, well, what does this mean, and what does that mean, and was this the actuals, or was this,
Yeah.
so that we can start to prep our questions. I don't think it's not,
I don't
Is
think
it
it's gonna
okay
be-
as what do you want to call it, a session with learning the proper vocabulary that she uses, or that we use, you know, et cetera. I mean, she's the expert, so-called, isn't she?
yeah, so
Looking at all these,
but you're not suggesting that we just get the data that day and have her walk us through it. Is that what you're recommending?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
I mean, how much time and effort do we want to put in before the expert presents the data to us?
So
You know, we'll be sitting there looking at it as she's up there speaking, You know, but then we can say, she can say, okay, you see on line 32 here, we've got such and such, you know. Oh, yeah, okay, that's good to know, you know, and then what about this? Oh, yeah, okay. You know,
So you so you don't wanna see it in advance, you want her to walk you through it?
it would be okay to see it in advance. I don't know how much time I would spend on it.
Okay.
Because I expect that when she is in the room, she's going to be guiding what I'm looking at.
Okay.
For what it's worth, I had, Diane sent me the first iteration of it. It's 2 pages. It's a spreadsheet with all the positions and how each town
Yep.
pays each of the positions. And then there's a second page of very rudimentary analysis that, I mean, and I'm no whiz kid with this stuff, but I sat there for about a half an hour looking for it and said, okay, I see what we got here.
So what you,
There wasn't a lot of,
you've read an abstract of what she's going to address us on.
yeah,
Well, I mean, that's, if it's only 2 pages and it,
Well,
Well, it was 2 pages.
that was the salary survey.
understood, yeah.
With, at the end, a statistical analysis of percentiles matched against the average. It was basically an Excel spreadsheet. That was the preliminary, here's where I'm at with my salary, my data gathering process. When I talked to her 2 weeks ago, she said, I would expect that by your meeting in January on the 27th, I potentially would have all of this other information, which she shot to me like right before the meeting. It was not because she was expecting that I was gonna distribute it. She said, I think I should have it by then. And then I just asked if she was still on track for a February 24th meeting with her final sort of work product for discussion, which is still draft format. And she said, yes, she would be on target for that date.
well, look, my recommendation would be that when Diane gets the rest of the data that she's gonna have available for us in the next 2 weeks, that we distribute it to the board and take as little or as much time as individuals feel is required at that point, and then come prepared with questions and open ears. Thoughts?
All right, that's what I think, just so you're familiar with sheet A, sheet B,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah?
that's what I.
And then what about a meeting with Tracy?
I'd like to effort that. You know, I haven't talked to Tracy about it. I think Diane said she's out for a few days, but let me reach out to her. Would you folks like to have a 15 to 30-minute conversation? I don't think it's gonna be a lot of heavy lifting.
Maybe I
So
do.
my thought is that we get the data, then we have a meeting, short meeting with Tracy, and Tracy kind of outlines her expectations of what to do with the data. And then we still haven't heard from the expert at that point as to, what the data looks like, what, to give us a guide there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I'm digging in way too deep, and, I'm thinking
No.
how I've done it, how it's been done, in large organizations that I've worked in. And it seems to me that I recall that, we have meetings, and that's when the information comes out. Somebody is facilitating the meeting and talking about methodology and numbers and, all of that. So, but whatever,
Okay.
So maybe we just confirm that Tracy would be in attendance at that meeting in February.
Is it fair you're better informed in some of those elemental meetings than we are in what's coming from Sandy?
Sure. Well,
And so it's kind of a learning curve. Most quality papers, easy reads are part of hard writing. And the presentation we got before was not hard writing. It was not an easy presentation, not an easy listening rather. So I would love at least an abstract, rather than a mountain of detail, a quality abstract as to where she's going in the presentation. That brings us a little bit up to speed, and to take your nomenclature reference, the idea that she perhaps is speaking a different language, and your experience level in larger community circumstances sort of dwarfs mine. I've been a small unit advisor for an entire career, listening to an awful lot of grand presentation, but being an expert with 2 master's degrees in the language, I have no education in the language of city management other than the human resources aspect of it. And this is a broad compensation study, and it's gonna require that we,
Well, another thought would be, I'm sorry, John.
no, I mean, that's done. I'm just looking for a little bit more qualification to hear the presentation, if that makes sense to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can reach out to Tracy, let her know about this conversation, and ask if she would, in lieu of meeting, if folks aren't, feeling like that's a necessity, have her send to this board, a couple of paragraphs on her thoughts about, what her expectations are. And, she's been at this job for a long time, she's been in a similar role in another organization. I'm sure she has thoughts about where she would like to see Newbury sit vis-a-vis, other towns in the.
To the main
And,
affordable.
what is the wisdom of being at 50% or being at 75% or whatever it might be? And see, again, the philosophical piece.
One thought on that, if we get that from Tracy
Mhm.
before we get the presentation from Sandy,
Yeah,
is that going to sway our interpretation of all the data? I would say yes.
To be prejudicial, yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
yep. Tracy wants it to be 50 percentile? Okay, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking for more qualification. The idea of how do you build a township that is beautifully positioned to hire and retain quality people, because it is the people of the village that make it what it is. And we're lucky, we've got a terrific cadre of employees. And the element is, how do you keep them? And that element comes with trying to remain competitive within your local radius villages, every village bringing its own level of, I sat next to people at a meeting last evening in the historic district, stuff in the Lower Green, and the question asked is, where were you living before you came to Newbury? Sudbury, Wakefield, there was a village of toasting of West Boston,
Mhm.
west suburb
Metro
of Boston,
West, yeah.
and they wanted out. And so how do you get young families that want to work in the township, whether it be the first employment or the second person's employment in this village? See what you get. You get the, Diane Doyle's and the Kristen Grubbs and that kinship of folk and a town clerk to die for. The people that really make this town easy to live in.
I have a lot of respect for Tracy in her current job, and previously she was in a CFO role, right, for West Newbury?
Yes.
So she's a numbers girl, right? And I have a lot of respect for that, but I know that if she gives us her input, that is going to sway my interpretation of the data, which, be that way.
Yeah, it's great, that's a great point.
You want a fresh look? Yeah. Well, that's a
Well,
valuable
we don't have to
point.
have that conversation with Tracy in advance then.
Yeah, that's a possibility. That's a very good idea.
Okay,
I think Lynn's right on the money with that one.
fine. Well, she's gonna come with not only her own methodology, but her own, her own philosophical bent on,
Recommendations and-
what she
yeah.
would like to see, and then,
Yeah.
okay, fair,
Okay.
fair?
So the summary is that when I get the data, I will distribute it for
Yeah.
review,
Yeah.
non-discussion purposes.
Right.
They'll
Who
confirm
define non-discussion purposes?
amongst board members.
In other words, I can't speak with you to get and I can't speak with Lynn or Tony or,
Well, technically speaking, two board members can talk to each other.
okay.
Or
not
even
as a board.
three, but I don't wanna get anywhere close to that threshold.
I get
For
it.
years, this board
Agreed.
has been very good about
Yeah,
ensuring that we never come anywhere close to crossing the line of open meeting
open
requirements.
meetings
Right.
to make it
And so,
public.
which is why I always say to you folks, whenever we're distributing anything in advance, please, no discussion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, can two people quietly have, yes, you can, but legally you can, I think, in my view, I would like to hold that to a bare bones minimum.
Yeah, we
because I
should
think-
stay away from it.
Yeah,
I also think to Lynn's point, let's all look at it independent, we're probably gonna all come up with different questions and
Yeah,
different
good
thoughts.
idea.
Mm.
And they'll come out in the meeting with
Yeah.
Sandy and Tracy.
right,
So I'll distribute the information when it comes in.
Okay.
okay,
I'll confirm with Tracy that she will be in attendance.
right,
my understanding is Sandy has committed to the 24th date, and we go from there.
Yep, good.
And that,
Good
the date is one more time,
February 24th is the next meeting.
it'll be 4 days away from my birthday.
Speaking of that next meeting.
Um,
No, it's fine.
Oh, I was
I'm
gonna,
out of town. And
You're out of town?
I'm out of town. But I do not want to move this meeting because Tracy has it on her calendar.
Okay.
Sandy has it on her
Oh.
calendar.
what, how long are you gonna be out of town for?
I'm gonna be out of town for a week.
I
And,
want you to be here.
well, I'd like to be here, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to ask, you know, because we have outside folks scheduled for this meeting.
Why can't we push Sandy and Tracy out
Yeah.
1 week?
Well, I'm sure we might, but I'm hesitant to
I'm
ask that.
comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable, yeah.
Mark, I would really
Push it out,
appreciate your attendance in this meeting.
Yeah, you are the
All right.
captain of the ship.
March 3rd,
Yeah, let's,
17th of February is President's Day, so we're not gonna do it then.
right.
So, or we could, I mean,
All right, so let's do this.
are you,
I'm gonna recommend we leave the 24th in place for now,
Mhm.
right? Just leave it as a placeholder. I will, do you want to speak to Sandy?
I'm sure Sandy,
And-
yeah.
Well, we don't know what her calendar looks like,
Okay.
you know, so, and Tracy, I don't know what her calendar looks like, so
So potentially March 3rd to see if they're
So-
both available?
yeah, March 3rd, is that a date that works?
Which,
Yeah.
I apologize.
Don't, enjoy whatever you're doing.
It's,
I hope it's warm.
So check with both of them to see if they're available.
yeah, we had some scheduling issues on our end, so it just so happens that was the week that was available, and I was not thinking ahead when I booked the trip, so I apologize for
That's
that.
all right.
So-
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will see if they're
so-
both available.
So let's book both dates, let's leave the 24th of February in place, and also pencil in Monday, March 3rd. We want to make sure the room's available, you know, there's a bunch of
Yeah,
ifs and
I'll
buts.
do that tomorrow, I'll do that first thing tomorrow.
Thank you.
If we're looking to move for different dates, I'm out of town the week of February 9th, and then the 17th is a holiday.
Right,
Yep,
Presidents, yeah.
that's why I went 1 week after.
yep.
Okay, so hopefully March 3rd, if for some reason that becomes problematic for Sandy and/or Tracy.
Then we can go to March 10th. Or we could do a different day of the
I was
week.
gonna say, we could always choose a different, we could do a Wednesday, we could, you know. Let me see if that works.
Okay, thank you all, I appreciate that. Okay, any other business? New business,
Okay,
other
okay with that?
topics? No?
Oh, good.
Okay.
Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment? Aye,
Aye.
we are adjourned.